If we can have everyone come to their seats, we're going to go ahead and get started in about 30 seconds. Thank everyone for coming out tonight. All righty, I want to take a moment to say thank you all for coming out tonight. Really excited to see everyone here in the room, and thank you to our panelists here with Dr. Moore and her chiefs and our board president, Claire Will. Just want to remind everyone that we will start with our panelists. They will cover updates from their respective departments, and then we will take questions at the later half of the hour. And we'll go ahead and remind everyone that we will be respectful. If you ask a question that we've already covered, we'll remind you of that and we'll move on. But I do want to make sure that we cover all questions and answers, okay? All righty, with that being said, I am going to actually have our board president, Madam Claire Will, to give us a brief opening and welcome.
There we go. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. This is the first town hall meeting we will have this year, and I hope there'll be several more before the year is over. We appreciate your support for MPS. We expect it to be the best school system in the state. That's our goal. Just a note about some recent questions concerning leadership at MPS. I'd like to give you a quick rundown of what's been accomplished by this leadership over the past 3 years. Before 3 years, at 3 years ago, we were under state intervention. We had not submitted a balanced budget on time. It wasn't balanced and it wasn't on time for several years. We didn't have the required 1 month operating funds in the bank. We were incredibly close to losing our accreditation with one of the worst reports that had been reported by Cognia, the accrediting agency. We had state audits which showed severe financial mismanagement, and we were grossly underfunded. Now, fast forward to today. Today, we are released from state intervention with a unanimous vote of the State Board of Education to take effect December the 1st. We have a balanced budget submitted on time for the last 3 years. At the end of the current fiscal year, we should have 3 months reserved for our operating fund in the bank. Not only are we fully accredited, but Cognia, the accrediting agency, is using MPS as a case study for how we accomplished being accredited in record time. The last audit we had was clean, and the past misdeeds, the crooks, have all been prosecuted. We were able, with your help, to pass the first ad valorem tax increase in over 50 years. This was accomplished by this leadership team, the board, and there are several board members here. As a matter of fact, can you stand up for just a second and just turn around and say hello? There we go. Now, to answer one other question that's been permeating, at least in my email and phone calls, Dr. Moore came here as an interim superintendent and has stayed for what will be almost 4 years at the end of this school year. She has elected to retire after 50 years of being in the education field. We have put out an RPF, which is a request for proposal, of a firm that will lead us on a national search for the next superintendent. There will be public input into this as well, from community leaders, from the business community, from school personnel, from governmental agencies. to help us pick the very best superintendent to lead us in the next phase of MPS. Again, thank you for being here, and I hope you'll find this to be an informative evening.
Thank you, Madam President. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. Moore to greet our audience and just give us a brief overview, Dr. Moore.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming out. I can only say ditto to what our president has said so far. Coming in, of course, out of retirement, I might add, having been superintendent in Huntsville almost 12 years. So it was a challenge. There were lots of things that we had to work on. I tried to garner the support of not only our school board, but also our people in the leadership arena, but as well as people out in the schools, our leadership teams out in the schools, the principals and the teachers, because a lot of the work that had to be done through them. And so we attempted to lead them in the direction of where we needed to go, designing somewhat of some roadmaps that would get us to the financial piece or get us to the accreditation piece, because I knew it could be done. It took a lot of work. It was done in record time. And I want to say, I think these people on stage and the people in the audience, I see some of our principals are here, probably some teachers as well, and our board members. They did an enormous amount of work in a short period of time. And that's why Cognia is going to use us as an example of how it can be done. So I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to have been the superintendent in here, Montgomery, for almost 4 years in July. I came as interim. I only meant to stay 6 months because the challenge was there and I was asked to try to help address it, and so I did. With that, I think we're in a good place for a new superintendent to come in and be able to move us to the next level. All of the dark clouds that were over MPS have, those clouds have been taken care of. And so with the support of the community and the board, this school system should be able to move to the next level. And so again, thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for allowing me to work with MPS in this community and to get us where we are now with a lot of help, and we're looking forward to moving to the next level.
All right, thank you, Dr. Moore, so much for that. And Madam President, now, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move over to the part of our forum where we hear from our chiefs and department leaders. And up first is Mr. Watts, who serves as MPS's Chief Financial Officer. So, Mr. Watts, if you don't mind sharing with everyone where we are as terms of finances and how we're pacing, and also keep in mind COVID, please, sir.
Absolutely. First, thank you all so much for coming out. I think these type of forums are very, very helpful. We certainly want to continue doing this to update the public of where we are. From a financial standpoint, many of you all probably remember a few years ago, our district was in dire financial straits. In fact, we recognized that if the board did not make some very, very tough decisions, that we were headed towards a negative fund balance. And of course, today, as Ms. Will has stated, we are projecting to end fiscal year 2022 with beyond 3 months the state required fund balance. In fact, we are projected to end fiscal year 2021, which ends September 30th, or ended September 30th. Of course, now we're working on year-end financials, but we're projecting to end fiscal year 21 with well over 2 months fund balance. So the district has made significant strides. I also just want to say that the district has met several other mandates that the state required, such as bank reconciliations, financial statements, budgets on time, and several other financial requirements that the state requires that we do. Beyond that, as we continue to look over our finances, we did recognize that we were not as competitive as we should be as it relates to many of our support employees. We have some situations with certified employees too, but some of the situations with our support employees was not very good. The board did approve for a 10% increase for the majority of our support employees, whereas we are now as competitive as many of our surrounding districts. One of the other problems that we faced was as soon as we hired bus drivers, and those bus drivers got their CDL license, they were gone to other school districts. Well, we are able to provide more than a 15% increase for those bus drivers to kind of make them a little more comparable with other school districts. So there are a number of things that we've done. We've put procedures, processes in place, and as Ms. Will has stated, many situations that you read about as far as employees are not following policies and procedures. Of course, many of those employees are no longer with us. So there are a number of things that we're doing, we're continuing to do. We also are more so bringing on more electronic processes as well, trying to get rid of all the paper now. So there are a number of things that we're doing, and certainly with the help of the board, the superintendent making some very tough recommendations, we are in much better shape now. I can foresee that this board will continue to do an excellent job from a financial standpoint, where we'll be able to do several things with not only with our employees, but also with the renovating and constructing of our buildings.
All righty. Mr. Watts, one question for you. You mentioned the processes that are in place to ensure that employees won't mishandle money. Can you speak a little bit to that and what bookkeepers and actually principals as well, they go through certain trainings, right, when it comes to financial matters?
Absolutely. In fact, the finance department now requires all principals and bookkeepers to attend a financial training each year. We also require all of our bookkeepers to be certified by the Alabama Association of School Business Officials in bookkeeping. Also, one of the recommendations that we made was we decided that we needed all of our bank accounts at one bank. At one point, all of our local schools had the autonomy to choose whichever bank they wanted. Therefore, we had probably a good 17 or 18 different bank locations, and it was hard to manage that. Well, now all of our accounts are at one bank, and now we could pretty much control and look at all of the activity at any given time from our central location. We've also put together for parents, or put in process for parents, an online payment process, whereas parents, they do not have to send money by their child to school. You could go into our system to pay any type of fees, donations, or fundraise, or whatever type of activity that is going on at that school. We can make those payments electronically now, so it kind of skips the middleman. Again, we're trying to eliminate the paper. Of course, during this COVID time, I think that's a good idea. And so these are the type of processes we'll put in place, and we'll continue to do so.
I thank you, Mr. Watts. And again, just to reiterate, the electronic process is definitely for accountability purposes. And as a parent, my school bucks is the online payment system that you're speaking of, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And not only that, it's also a convenience process for parents. We want it to be as convenient as possible for parents. Many times parents will have to drive to the school to drop monies off or send monies by their child, and certainly that eliminates that process as well.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Up next, we have Mr. Chad Anderson, who serves as our Executive Director of Operations. Mr. Anderson, share with us what's going on with our facilities.
Yes, ma'am. In our facilities, in my 3 years, in my tenure here in 3 years, we've completed 8 roofing projects, 2 complete school HVAC projects, over $2 million worth of flooring throughout the district, and just a multitude, 4 parking lots, a multitude of things that we have been able to scratch the surface with. One of the things that Mr. Watts was speaking on as far as funding and our general fund balance. One of the reasons why we've been able to do that, and we've been blessed, is because the state has provided some funding, ATF, ETF, Advancement of Technology Funds, and if you've been in our meetings, you've heard Mr. Watts say it more than once, these are one-time monies. And so with that, with those one-time monies, we've been able to take on some of those projects, a small part of what the district needs to be able to answer some of those things, but it's not, there wasn't a reoccurring fund source, and Ms. Wheel mentioned that with the taxes passing, we've been able to really tackle and take a look at our facilities, and that's where Volkert, we brought them on the board to prove that, and Volkert has come in and has done a full facility assessment. They are in the process of completing their report, hopefully within the month here, and then we'll be presenting something to the board for a full district-wide capital plan coming in December, hopefully for approval at that point. And then in January, their goal is to start the design process on all projects within the district that need that design phase with architectural. Another piece of our realm of operations is technology, and that has played a crucial part through COVID with what's gone on with having to be at home or working remotely. We've added over 18,000 Chromebooks to the district this year, over 1,300 interactive panels, and we have an order for about 300 or 400 more of those that'll be coming in. Over a ton of teacher devices for them to upgrade and be able to teach remotely, cameras for the district for teachers to be able to work from a better environment as far as doing a remote learning type session, 3,300 iPads. And one of the big things through all of this, when you talk about all those numbers of devices, is the infrastructure. And that's our next big goal, is to tackle our infrastructure to be able to handle the capacity of all those new devices and everything that's going on with that. So that's where operations is with as far as the technology and the building process. C&P has really worked through a lot of things over the last year or so, and the supply chain, which we can see all of that from what's gone on in the news, is really starting to affect us all from a standpoint of getting things in a timely fashion. But our folks, our vendors, have really worked with us. We've added new vendors to help keep our capacity up at the recommendation of the state, and we followed some of those things that they have also given us with guidance on, and just trying to make sure we provide the best for our kids during this really, really tough time of things.
And Mr. Anderson, you are speaking about the shortages as far as the food, which is a national crisis right now.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
It's and a lot of it is not necessarily the food. It has to do with the supply chain, where your warehouse workers or your truck drivers or those different
Sure.
people. I mean, we have worked Saturdays to unload trucks at different schools. Before I came over here, we had schools that were delivering after hours, so my supervisors in C&P had to stay over an extra to make sure the schools were receiving their foods. And there are districts around us that have not received orders in 3 weeks, and we've been blessed that our vendors work with us to make that happen and get the things we've needed. And we've added new vendors to try to alleviate some of the issues at the request of our own vendor, to add those vendors, because there are certain things that are just in high demand right now.
Sure. So you don't foresee any shortages when it relates to MPS when it comes to supply, meaning food or paper products? It looks like we're pacing well right now.
We are pacing well. We had 1 week there that was very tough, but we made it through. And it's a typical thing to borrow from one school to the other. I mean, it happens where your plates may run out at one location, or your bread may run out, and you may borrow from a nearby location to make that happen. That's a typical thing that happens. And that week we just made it happen and worked with each other. And I was really proud of our schools and how they pulled together. And our vendor was able to bring us a load for that Saturday. And at their request, we added new vendors and brought in more the next week, and it's somewhat gotten back on track as far as their normal delivery type schedule.
Sure.
But we've just worked with them to make it work, and that's what this environment, I mean, we have to work with each other. You have to give people an opportunity to make things right and work with them and be patient and kind and just do your best. And sometimes, and a lot of times, that means going above and beyond, you know, the normal type
Sure.
of thing.
Sure. Mr. Anderson, let's circle back to the first point that you made. You actually received a question that came through our community forum where we asked the public to submit their questions and comments. And then the question is regarding parking lots. Several schools have parking lots that have potholes and things like that. Do you mind sharing with the public how we're addressing that?
Sure. We're working with the City of Montgomery. We've entered a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with them, and over the next 5 years, they're going to be working to help pave all of our parking lots. In that agreement with them, they provide the services because they have those type of crews, road crews, and albeit it's like us, they're small, so that we really have to work with them on things to logistically to make it all work out. But they are paving, and we've paved 4 of those so far. They're actually finishing up one this week, I believe, at one of our locations, and we'll just keep working with them. But we have to work with them on their schedule and their timing of things, and of course they're working through COVID just like we are, with shortages and labor shortages and different things. But it's been a really good partnership. It's going to save the district a ton of money, and that was set before we were able to receive the tax referendum.
Ad valorem money.
And also it really helped us with that, and we just really appreciate the partnership between the city and the school to make that happen for our district. And we're trying to work with them as far as the areas that they're in.
Sure.
So if they are working, say, on the north side of town, we want to try to work with those parking lots, and we've tried to address some of the more critical ones at this point. And maintenance will go out and patch potholes periodically. Along with that, again, labor shortages and things, we do our
But we're
best.
pushing through. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right. Up next, we have Mr. Bernard Mitchell, who serves as our Chief Academic Officer. Good evening, Mr. Mitchell. I think you tapped the button at the bottom there. Switch with Mr. Anderson. Just switch with Mr. Anderson.
That's
All
a
right.
great lead-in, collaborative working. I want to begin with the mission and vision that we have to educate, engage, and inspire our students to succeed in college, career, and beyond. And one of the ways to do that is that you begin at early grades in elementary, where you're learning to read, and then you're reading to learn, and then all the way to college and career readiness. It's very important that we graduate students that are college and career readiness. And here's what's very important. In the past, we've had a great variance between the students who graduated and who graduated ready. And one of the ways that we are seeking to close that divide is through enrollment. And think about that. A child can graduate from high school with both an associate's degree and a high school diploma. They can get a jump start on life. They also gives the parents an opportunity to begin college with 2 less years of college payments. College is very expensive. So think about that. You have the opportunity to begin as a junior in college. Now, one of the things that very important, I know is out there. Last year, we had a great decrease in our math scores. We did not have a great decrease in our ELA scores. And we know that math is more tactile, kinesthetic. If you cannot engage with students, show them how to do it. If I ask you to raise your hand if you struggle in math, most people may raise their hand right now. And you had to engage in mathematics virtually, not face-to-face, without the tactile, kinesthetic opportunity to learn. But what we are doing now is to make sure that every day we want to make sure we consider how do we engage our students through a tactile, kinesthetic approach. You learn by doing. John Dewey said that almost 300 years ago, and it still holds true today.
All righty, Mr. Mitchell, this question came in numerous times. I'll just paraphrase it and just get right to the point. Our parents and community stakeholders, they want to know if a virtual option is on the horizon.
I think it's very important that we realize that when we were out last year virtual, our students did not perform well. So we want to do everything we can to have our students face-to-face. And like I said, for the most part, in mathematics, you need that hands-on, tactile, kinesthetic approach. And so if at all possible, we're trying to stay face-to-face, so those type of learners that are more in our district, they're not auditory for the most part, they're not visual for the most part, they're kinesthetic. So being face-to-face is our goal. Now, if we have to go virtual, thank you, Chad Adamson and technology, we do have the ability now to be one-to-one, so we can engage with our students. But it's not as easy to engage in a learning environment virtual as it is face-to-face.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, and we'll circle back to some other questions regarding virtual learning, but thank you for clarifying that. All righty, up next we have Ms. Kim Gillis, who serves as our Associate Superintendent of Human Resources. Good evening, Ms. Gillis.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this
Yes, ma'am.
evening.
Do you mind giving us a brief overview of what we're doing over in Human Resources and how creative we're being with the shortages that we're facing?
I'm glad that you asked me that question because that's really what I wanted to focus on this evening. Although Human Resources is responsible for many different tasks, the one that I think is most important, especially now, is that we attract, recruit, and retain good teachers. To me, that's the most important because in order for Mr. Mitchell to do the things that he needs to do with curriculum and instruction, you have to have someone in the building to do those things, to make sure that we can provide the services to our kids. Unfortunately, there is a teacher shortage, and there is not a teacher shortage in Montgomery. There is a national teacher shortage. So even when we go to fairs, and we go to fairs inside of Alabama, outside of Alabama, there's still a shortage everywhere. So it's been really hard for us to attract teachers and to recruit them. When we go to the fairs, what we've noticed, there's a great decrease in the number of graduates in education. So what do we do about that? We don't just say, oh, well, we can't find anyone. That is not the right answer. The right answer is look for some innovative ways to try to get people to teach and people who can teach. We're not looking for a warm body in a room. We're looking for people who are dedicated and love kids and who have a passion for teaching. So one of the things that we tried this year, and I think it was really successful, is we had a MPS fair at the mall. Of course, we wanted to target anyone who had a teaching certificate already, who may have moved in the Montgomery area, whether that's Montgomery or some of our surrounding counties, and maybe to explain to them how important it is for Montgomery schools to have the best teachers. But the other part of that fair was for us to recruit people who may have a pure degree in a subject area, and they might want to teach, but didn't know what to do about that. So we had our fair. We had tons of people to show up, and they had to bring their transcript, because you can't just say, I love math and I want to teach it. I have to see your transcript to make sure you've had good grades in math, you have a degree in math, and that you would be good for our kids. So we did interviews on the spot, and I want to thank all of our principals who showed up and helped us through that process. That was excellent for them to do that. But we met those people, and as of today, and I say today because that number is constantly increasing, we are employing 104. We have 104 alternatively certified people that we would not have had. That would have been 104 vacancies that we would have had we not done something different. Now, what does it mean to be alternatively certified?
Yes.
Well, the State Department offers several kinds of certificates. Most of us went through a traditional teaching program, but because of the shortage, and even before the shortage, they offered some alternative measures. If you think back when you were 18 and you went to college, you may not have known what you wanted to do, so you majored in basket weaving or whatever. But then you realized, you know, I have a passion to do this. So what the State Department offers is an alternative certificate. It means that you have to take some classes in classroom management and special ed, and you also have to pass all of the tests that teachers pass, like the praxis exam, so that we can make sure that you're qualified as far as the content knowledge and how to deal with children. And then we provide mentors for those folks, whether it's a new principal or it's a new teacher. That's just one of the things that we've tried this year. The other thing we've used as a recruiting tool is our teams. And if you've heard of teams before, great, but if you haven't, TEAM stands for Teacher Excellence and Accountability for Mathematics and Science. And this is One of the things that Mr. Mitchell spoke about is that math is an area where we struggle, our students struggle, but it's also an area that's hard to fill, meaning it's very hard to find math and science teachers. It is. That is growing across all of the disciplines, but the State Department has allowed us to put teachers on a different contract if they qualify. And I won't go through all of the qualifications tonight. If you want to know those and you're interested, please call me. I'll be happy to share that with you. But if they do, they work 2 extra days. So rather than being 187 days, they have to work 189 days. And you might say, well, it's just 2 days. But there are some other requirements. They have to actually get an advanced credential, which means they either have to become STEM certified or they have to become nationally board certified, which is going to be not only good for the teacher to increase their knowledge, but it's going to be great for our students because they're going to learn all of those extra strategies to teach our students. So that's something we're using as a recruiting tool as well. They have a little bit more of a robust salary schedule. That salary schedule is online if you'd like to see that at the Alabama State Department of Education website. We have guidelines in which they have to follow. The board, each time that I presented, has approved those contracts, which is awesome for our teachers, but it's going to also be awesome for our students.
Well, thank you, Ms. Gillis, for that. And you are encouraging anyone that is interested in a teaching position or any other positions that we have that they visit our website.
Most definitely. And right now, Ms. Jones, we have 56 Teams teachers, which I think is awesome.
That is awesome. Good deal. Thank you. All righty. Well, up next we have Dr. Kathleen Williamson, who serves as our Associate Superintendent of Student Services. I'm going to say Student Services and Support. Am I right with that?
Student Services.
Student Services, very good. Thank you, Dr. Williamson, for being out tonight. Do you mind just sharing with the public a little brief overview of your area? You know, COVID has been difficult for not only students, but definitely teachers and families just in general. Share a little bit about what we're doing for our students to help, you know, pace through the pandemic right now.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So in Student Services, we had much discussion around the big table in preparation for bringing our students back. We know that during the pandemic and when our babies were not able to be with us, that they not only were they separated from us for the instructional purposes, but they were separated from us for the socialization piece, as well as some of those other supports that they receive while they are here with us in MPS. So we have had a large focus on how can we bring our babies back safely, as well as how can we provide the additional supports that's needed so that they can transition back in well. So we had the great opportunity to write 2 grants while we were out during the pandemic. We were awarded both of those. One was to bring in a mental health service coordinator position, and with the help of Mr. Watts, we were able to match that grant that the State Department provided for us so that we can hire someone that helps us when children transition in and need mental health services or need the coordination of those services as they transition in and out of our district, as well as to help our staff recognize mental health needs in young people. We also wrote for a grant with Thriveway, again, awarded through the State Department, that allows us to focus on anti-bullying and other social-emotional learning wellness pieces for children, as well as suicide pieces, and so on and so forth. As we have focused on these pieces, we have had the great opportunity to increase for this year. This is our first year to really have a targeted focus on it, social emotional learning within our district. So we have a district-wide effort that we are rolling out this school year since we brought our children back, and we actually launched it during our launch program in Mr. Mitchell's summer school effort over the summer. So all of our counselors in our district have been trained in our social emotional learning curricula pieces. We have one that is elementary targeted as well as one that is secondary specific. We have also had the great opportunity to bring in Rhythm, and Rhythm will begin for us this month, and it will give us the opportunity not only to assess daily how well our children are doing, where they have need, but it also gives us an opportunity to check our faculty and staff as well, so that we can be as responsive as we can for meeting the needs of anyone in any of our buildings on our campuses. I do want to highlight that we have been able to expand our partnerships throughout the community. So wherever we have a need, we can connect children to supports. We've had the great blessing to be able to expand our behavior support staff over the past few years. We are working to also expand our social work staff this school year because we know that our children need those additional supports. So we are very excited about how we can be responsive to those needs, and with those partnerships, we can even help connect our families. So we know our first responsibility is to our babies, but we know that our babies don't operate in isolation, and there are times that there are supports that are needed beyond that baby, and we make sure to use our partners to help the whole family.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Williamson, for that. And thank you to everyone on the stage tonight. This is the part where we turn it over to the audience, and we'll start with questions. Mr. Scott Johnson, who works in our office, will help me tonight with the microphone. We will meet you where you are. If you have a question, we would love to hear from you. So please raise your hand if you have a question. You can go ahead and stand up, or maybe, yep.
Thank you for having this tonight. We certainly appreciate it as parents of MPS students. My question goes back to the RFP that you have for the superintendent search. What is that RFP already posted? What's the timeline for those proposals to be submitted? And when does the board plan on choosing that firm and then going forward with the search for the next superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to direct that over to Ms. Will if you're ready.
Yes. Thank you for asking. The RFP went out in August, and it closes next week. So within a week or two of the closing, we should have a firm chosen. Once that happens, the firm that is chosen to conduct this search will be conducting they will talk to different groups, parents, teachers, our government officials, our business community, as well as our board members and staff. You know, the whole goal is to pick the very best superintendent to take this legacy to the next level. I can't give you a specific time. If I'm guessing, I think that we should have someone named, I hope, by March or April. And that's the best I can give you on a timeline. That'll be up to the firm. The firm will come in and put public notices out. It will be widely known that we are looking for parental and
Madam President, may I just add for the parent there, the RFP is on the current on our website. And I am assuming that the search firm will probably work with us in our website as a vehicle as well. Okay? Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Thank you, Madam President, for that. One in the back?
Yes, I just have a question about the renovations for the schools. Is there a particular order that you all are going by? Just wondering because my daughter does attend a school where the gym is extremely outdated and extremely hot. Like there's no AC at all.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, will you take that one, please?
Yeah, Volker will help us prioritize things, and it will be prioritized by the critical needs basis of so. I mean, this district has not had major renovation as a district in 40 or 50 years. I mean, we've built some new schools and we've done a few things, but just an example, I mean, when we replaced the HVAC at Jeff Davis, when they drained the pipes, the chiller pipes out of there, some of the pipes fell apart. I mean, we have those kind of things just going around the district in general. I mean, and that's what 40, 50 years of no major renovation, you know, district-wide for that. But they'll help us prioritize those things, and it will be backed with engineering and architectural design and also their input as well. And that's what they've been doing with their audit so far. They've had construction people, engineers, walking through our buildings, looking at the different systems to help us prioritize those things and make the best decision and put things together. And again, they want to start all design phases on the projects as quickly as possible, all at once, but understand this too. If we're adding a wing to a school, that's the design phase of that may take 6 months. And then you have other processes. You got to take it through DCM, which is 30 days they have to give you a response. Then you have to make any corrections, and then it can go back to them for another 30 days, and then you bid it out, and you have some things you have to bid out longer than others based on the cost of it. And then once you get the bid, then you have to take the low base bid, get a contract together, bring that to the board for approval, and going to go forth with that. So a roof might take a month or two. BTW took over 9 months, and we already had some of the programming done with them going into it. So a lot of these things are going to take some timing, and it'll help spread some things out.
And Mr. Anderson, let's share with the public too that Volker is the firm that's handling our capital projects, and they're actually hosting town hall meetings for the public to go over what those plans look like, so that let me do it like this, y'all. Sorry, we will advertise when those town halls will be, and you can come out and hear how those plans will look, okay? Definitely go to our website. As you know, I'll do robocalls and things like that, but we're firming up that schedule now, and Volker will host public town hall meetings, okay? Next question, Scott.
Ms. Jones, may I also state?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1 second. Real brief, Mr.
Just
Watts.
very briefly, I also want to just state that as it relates to the renovation of buildings, the ad valorem tax that was passed, of course, it was passed in the previous September. However, we would not start receiving those funds until October or November of 2023. So we still have a delay in collecting those funds, although the tax the tax was passed. And again, we're very thankful to the community for passing that. Absolutely. And of course, I don't know what shape we would be in if that tax would have failed. So thank you all again for that.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Johnson.
All right, good evening. This question is for Mr. Mitchell. Okay. I strongly agree with you about the fact that it would be better if we got face-to-face with our kids. But I would like to know, what are we doing, or do we have anything in place going forward to reduce the student size, especially in your traditional school? I'm not trying to make a comparison with Magnum and our tradition, but in our traditional school, your average class size is about 25 to 30. And I think in order for your instructor to be more effective with their kids, if we could reduce that size and make it much better.
All right, tonight we spoke about the creative ways that human resources is trying to recruit more teachers to reduce that class size, but I will allow them to answer that. Yes, sir.
And as Mr. Gillis communicated earlier, it's very difficult sometimes to find a teacher in certain areas. And I know that the device, especially if you're talking about high school, it's at about 17.95. And I want to just commend teachers at Lee High School. I was there this week. They have a class of 42 students, and the teacher is teaching, because Dr. Morse could not find any math teachers to fulfill all of the assignments. And so having a conversation with his teachers, they said we can do one of two things: allow empty classrooms to not provide instruction, or support students with larger class sizes. As a school, they decided that we will have larger class sizes and support our students. And I know that 42 students is not ideal at all. But I want to commend a teacher for being willing to teach 42 students when the divisor is somewhere around 17.95. It's difficult, but we're finding a way to do it, and I know there's other schools as well that are attacking our current environment the best they can, but that's very, very, very challenging, not having enough teachers in our classes.
Ms. Gillis, yes, ma'am.
I want to add that we are still constantly, just because it's not the beginning of the year, we are still recruiting teachers. We're still out beating the bushes. We are still looking for teachers. We did not take any teaching units from any school this past year, which should have been helpful. And it would have been helpful had we had not had so many retirements, resignations, and those kinds of things. But don't think that we're not still looking just because it's not the beginning of the school year. It's an ongoing task. As long as there's a teacher shortage, we will be looking for qualified teachers to help reduce those class sizes.
All righty, thank you, sir, for that question. Scott, the next question.
Hi, thanks for this opportunity. I wanted to ask Mr. Anderson, just kind of piggybacking on the renovation question asked by another parent. I know the middle school in my neighborhood, Capitol Heights Middle School, I think it was one of the roofs that was replaced. You mentioned 8 roofs that were replaced. However, I know that it is still actively leaking, and the building has multiple bug infestations during the summer program. Students were forced to evacuate classrooms that were infested with wasps and ants. The copiers consistently don't work. Teachers are limited to 500 copies per school year, even though they have more than 100 students. So I guess my question is, I recognize the long-term plan, which is to be addressed with Volker and doing the capital project, and I think that's great, and I recognize the income from that doesn't start until 2023. Is there anything that we're going to do to address the more urgent needs, and like what can students at Capitol Heights Middle School or some of these other schools expect? Because it's going to be years before some of those bigger capital projects are really addressed.
Yeah, and that is one of the roofs. And when you're replacing a large roof system, that's why you have a 1-year warranty on that roof, and they'll come back. One we did Brubaker Middle. We had a few little leaks here and there, and we had to come back in and keep working on it. And plus, you're changing to a different roof system too, because that roof was put on over 100 years ago, and so it's a different type of roof system. So again, we work off of what the school provides us. If there's a leak, they'll put in a work order, and of course we would have the contractor out there to help, with those things. And again, we're working on some things. Like I said, we have 10 roofs that are in the design phase of other locations that we're working on and putting together. One of the things that's kind of delayed some of the planning is having the tax referendum pass. It's a blessing, but it also, you want to make sure you get the plan right before you sink just a ton of money into certain things with that. So that's some of what's going on there. But some of those things are not really in my realm as far as copiers and that sort of thing. That's just something they need to, place work orders and work with the different departments to help them address those things. But we're going to continue to work until those funds become available and the plan comes into fruition, and then we have all that together.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Good evening. Let me start by saying to the superintendent and chairwoman and board members' leadership, congratulations and commendations for your success to date in your work for our school system. I had a question that's kind of a follow-up to two others related to repairs. As you know, Mr. Anderson, I had an opportunity to work with you over the last year or so as a community advisor relative to capital repairs. And I know our challenge at the time in looking at the list across the district were just the number of significant repairs that are needed in the schools, roofings, HVACs, flooring, et cetera. And I also know that the $5 million or so from the Education Trust Fund, one-time monies, we can't rely on it from year to year. It's carryover. But according to my information, we have received, $209 million from emergency relief funding. I might have those numbers wrong, so I stand to be corrected. My question would be, since the other funding is somewhat long-term or it's not immediate, are there yet plans for that 200 or so million that can be used around capital repairs, or what other major initiatives in the immediacy that we might be able to see from those funds? And I know that
that's
the
some of the
education plan was just released yesterday.
Yeah, and that's some of the 10 roofs, some of the HVAC, some more flooring that we're talking about. As far as the specific allocations, I mean, we just received a small portion of that. A lot of what the state really wanted and required is continuing education with that to try to catch our kids up from missing so much learning, the loss of learning. Mr. Watts might want to jump in a little bit more.
Do we yet have plan for the 209 million?
What was the question again?
I'm sorry.
You're mentioning the 209 million.
The ESSER.
The ESSER fund.
I know
Oh,
the
the
state
ESSER
just
funds.
released its plan yesterday, and I just wondered, have we yet had an opportunity to develop our plan for the 209 or so? I'm told that the Montgomery Public School System was allocated of that funding.
Well, we certainly are allocating some of those ESSER funds or a percentage of those ESSER funds towards facilities repairs also. But let's keep in mind that those ESSER funds are very, very stringent, those federal dollars. And there's only certain things you can expend those dollars on. It just so happens that HVAC and some flooring and some roofs, we can do some things there, and we will. But we have to be extremely careful with how we use and expend federal dollars. I do need to say this, though, even when we talk about the ad valorem tax that was approved, we'll get about $33 million a year from those taxes, and of course we'll be able to do a bond issue, and VOCA would assist us in putting together a capital plan after a demographic study has been done. But I also want to just say to everyone, we have a number of schools with a number of issues. So in this demographic study, in this facilities assessment, there will also be a need for us to possibly consolidate some schools. So we'll have to look very, very carefully at the number of schools we have, where those schools are located, the population, what are the city plans for those particular areas, and make some very, very hard decisions as it relates to that. As Mr. Anderson stated, that's why it's so important that we get this plan right, because we don't want to, just put monies out there or spend monies on a school where the population projections is expected to continue to decrease in those particular areas. So we have to be extremely careful about that. But yes, we are allocating some of those ESSER funds towards some of those repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. We're nearing our 5-minute warning. Scott, another question, please.
Yeah, just to thank you guys for having us. Just to piggyback off of the class size, you mentioned 42 people in a upper level class, and I just truly cannot imagine having to teach that many students at one time. So hats off to that teacher for sure. With the surplus of funds, has there been any consideration in buying technology or teacher sharing with local districts where you could have one technology system facilitating learning going on in another district or at another high school locally? I know it is really hard to get teachers in those upper level sciences, upper level maths, foreign languages, but being able to have an empty classroom with a warm body in it, facilitating lab instruction from somewhere else. I know there's also a really huge need for remote learning right now. There's a lot of teachers. I know you like to say that some teachers don't have to have certain certifications, so one teacher could be instructing from their home or another district or another high school locally. Has there been any consideration on using some of that funding to purchase technology? I do know that that is available, and lots of districts across America are using that. Is that something you guys are considering in the creative ways that you guys have been discussing? Thank you.
Yes, great question. Matter of fact, as recent as last week, we reallocated money. We're going to send $11 million back to schools, so if they can find retired teachers, paraprofessionals, aspiring educators, whatever possible out there, they can utilize anything that's possible to reduce class size, to have a second person within the classroom, do exactly what you said, to have virtual opportunities where a person, maybe through Edgenuity, instructional services, is providing the instruction, and a paraprofessional is a person that's in the classroom. So yes, we're using those opportunities as well. Thank you. Yes, we're doing it already, but I think that this particular school said that they felt virtual opportunity for their children did not serve them best. So they had a conversation within that building and said this is the best way. But in that particular school, they can have a paraprofessional in there at the same time to make the class size not be 42 to 1, but 21 to 1.
All righty. Okay, real quickly. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My question is regards facilities as well. I've been to Capitol Heights Middle School and volunteered there. There's just like holes in the windows, and it gets freezing and these are students are expected to be held in classes in there. And, I can't do much. I can't put a roof on a building, but how can I be a good advocate? Maybe I can raise enough money to get windows on the side of the school. How can we as parents of children in that system, and I am one, help in that regard?
I want to jump in real quickly. That's a great question and point. I want to point out that we are hosting those town hall meetings, right, Mr. Anderson, in regards to our building needs, and that's with Volker. And we will announce those dates and times, and we encourage you to come out, and those questions can be answered by that facility group. Mr. Anderson, did you have anything else to add to that, or is that where we can really get into the nuts and bolts of that?
The biggest thing, and I hate to say it, is patience is really, with Volker doing what they're doing, the ad valorem tax coming, we're talking to renovate, and I had family members that went to Capitol Heights and to Lanier, and to renovate a Lanier, you're talking $60–70 million just to renovate that, and that's not a fund we have at this current point. Now, fortunately, with ad valorem, it's going to get there, but we have to be patient. We have to plan it correctly and get it there. The big thing for me was, and we had Capitol Heights in the works before the ad valorem really kind of took place, and so it got in that mix of things. But the envelope is the most important thing, and that's your roof, your windows, your doors. Those are some things we want to address immediately. Those critical needs, and when we start something, I'm also one of those people too. I don't want to just do it halfway. I don't want to just put some windows on the front of it. If I'm going to go in there and renovate Capitol Heights, I want to do it all, because that's where you really stress your manpower and your resources when you're constantly, if you only do a little piece of something, you're constantly going back and forth there. But again, patience is going to be the key here, and please come to the town halls. Please provide input. We'd love to have all the input we can get. That's the way we can make the best informed decisions. And Volkert has hit the ground running, and couldn't be more pleased with them.
And I do want to add, too, that we are going to try our very best to stream those town hall meetings, okay? So if you're unable to attend, we do plan to stream those, all right? Thank you, sir. Real quickly, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I wanted to address Mr. Mitchell concerning students who have to go home if there is a COVID outbreak. Do you have a policy for teachers who teach virtually, or a procedure? And if those policies and procedures are violated, what is the recall? Because my daughter was a part of that class in Goodwin where they had the situation. We have not been addressed as the parents. The children have not been addressed. And my daughter was in that class. And I'm very curious to how something like that could happen. So before I vocalize how I feel, I'm just curious, does MPS have a policy and procedure in place for teachers who have to teach virtually?
It's a great question. There's no policy, but there are procedures. We have standing procedures, and those procedures are on our website for COVID-related incidences. All of them go through our nursing department as well to validate whether it's something significant and what we should do. But there are procedures. There's a difference between a board policy and a procedure, and the procedures are outlined on the website.
So guidelines as far as the classroom, like set up, okay. Do they have to have those classroom? Okay.
For the teachers, yes. Teachers are expected to adhere to all of those same policies. They are expected, whether they do it or not, is something else, but they are expected to be dressed professionally, not in nightgowns, hair rollers, and we have stressed that from the district level. And our principals are monitoring that as much as they can. They can do drop-ins, they can do all of those different things through our platforms.
All right. All right. Okay. We're going to move on real quickly. That's a great point and question. And if you'll stay behind, we'll try our best to answer that. And again, we're recording all of this, and I do want to make sure that everyone understands that we will try to have a recap of all of this. I assure that. We have one more question. I know we're right at time. This is really, really good. Scott, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My question is concerning, if I understand the protocol and the policy when you have a issue with a teacher within MPS, but it seems like when your issue lies with someone at central office, it goes stale. Is there any policy or procedures in place to address issues when it involves someone who works in central office?
Yes, we do have a grievance policy, and we also have complaint forms if you have a complaint against anyone in the district.
In reference to the grievance, I have sent 26 emails. I have addressed 7 individuals who works with MPS, and I have yet to receive any response or any kind of feedback in regards to the issue that I have.
Are you?
Okay.
I guess this is a conversation we probably
Yeah, let's
need
do,
to
I
be
think
more
so.
specific.
I think that might be
and
a
we can
specific,
talk,
two specific,
right.
conversations
And we
there.
can talk after this if you'd like to.
If you'll do that. Okay, and then we will recap. Okay, you all, we are at a time, believe it or not, and this was really great. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, but I do want to take a moment to thank our elected officials I do see here tonight. Thank you to our county commission, our business leaders that are here joining us, and most definitely our parents. Continue to come out and support. We're going to meet you where you are and make sure that we answer these questions and get the communication on that website, www.mps.k12.al.us. So again, thank you so much, and I do want to turn it over to Dr. Moore for final thoughts and words. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, and I would like to again thank all of you for coming out tonight. Very interesting dialogue. I kind of equate just briefly the fact that early on we only had 10 meals. And it's kind of like if you have 5 children and they all need a new pair of shoes, you have to figure out which one you're going to buy the shoes for first, because you really don't have the monetary ability to buy shoes for all 5 of them at one time. Taking that to a larger scale, when we look at a school that is much larger than a home, and replacing the roof or replacing the air conditioning, and looking at the age of our buildings, even trying to put in a new HVAC system where the walls are very narrow and the kind of moisture that you might have. It's very complex in many ways, but thanks to you and the public for approving the increase in the ad valorem taxes. It will take probably, I think our build out with our management crew will be about 4 years. And so all of a sudden, if you're around that long, you'll start to see a cycle of schools starting to look better, and then you can keep them up. And when obsolescence sets in, you'll be able to go in and do something about it. So we do appreciate you all for the support that you're giving to the school system. I can see a difference from the time I came here to now in the kind of support and even the questions that come in about the school system. So we do appreciate that. Your involvement is really, really super important. And on that note, I'll close, but thank you again so much for all of your involvement tonight and the questions, and then those that you have also submitted to Jade.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Be safe.